Racist police arrest black man for fun, but are terrified to discover that his father is their boss. What happens when the line between laughter and terror becomes dangerously thin? In a small conservative town in the United States, where police presence is synonymous with oppression, a situation that should have been harmless turns into a revealing nightmare. Jamal Anderson, a 22-year-old black man, was eager to visit his father, Captain Frank Anderson, the local police chief. As a law student in New York, Jamal had always stood out for his intelligence and charisma, but also for his acute awareness of the injustices surrounding him. He carried within him a deep desire for reconnection with his father, an attempt to heal emotional wounds that had opened over years of ideological misunderstandings. Jamal believed that by sharing his convictions about the need to reform the police system, he could finally make his father understand the realities he faced as a black man. That night, as he walked through the city streets, the atmosphere was thick with tension that Jamal couldn't ignore. The whispers and disdainful glances from the locals followed him, a constant reminder that even in his hometown, he was not fully accepted. The environment was hostile, and the presence of local police known for their racist attitudes made everything even more threatening. Then, in a moment that felt like a joke, Officers Cole and Rick approached Jamal. Their intention was to make a joke, an approach that quickly escalated to shouting and racial slurs. Jamal, in a mix of confusion and indignation, tried to explain his identity, but his words were drowned out by the brutality of the situation. He found himself cornered, trapped in a reality he never imagined he would experience, especially on a night that was supposed to be about family reconciliation. When the officers realized that the man they had arrested was actually Captain Anderson's son, panic took hold of them. Fearing Frank's wrath, they tried to deflect responsibility, claiming that Jamal had provoked the encounter. This attempt to cover up led them to a moral abyss where the line between right and wrong completely disintegrated. The consequences of this explosive encounter reverberated through the town, gaining attention on social media and in the news. Frank, confronted with the brutality that his own son had suffered under his command, found himself at a crossroads. With the weight of guilt on his shoulders, he decided to take a stand and, for the first time, confront the institutional racism he had ignored for so long. Through this narrative, the complexity of family relationships is explored in a context of racial tensions, revealing the internal struggle of a father who must choose between loyalty to colleagues and the protection of his son. The story culminates in a powerful message about the possibility of change and redemption, both for the characters and for society as a whole. Jamal's battle is not just against the injustice he faces, but also for the transformation of a system that urgently needs reform. Jamal Anderson was lost in his thoughts as he walked through the dimly lit streets of his hometown. The echoes of laughter and conversations from other young people contrasted with the tense silence surrounding him. He felt the weight of distrust in the looks he received and the invisible pressure of the expectation that, as the son of the police captain, he should be grateful for his position. But the truth he carried in his heart was far more complex. That night, he was determined to have an honest conversation with his father. Jamal wanted Frank to understand the pain and struggle that many in the community faced, especially him as a young black man. But the unexpected approach from Officers Cole and Rick shattered any hope of a peaceful reunion. What started as a poorly placed joke quickly turned into a scene of humiliation and aggression. Jamal was not prepared for the intensity of the attack, and even as he tried to remain calm, indignation burned within him. As he tried to defend himself, his mind filled with memories of his childhood, moments when he admired his father, believing that being a police officer was synonymous with justice. But now, as an adult, he saw what his father seemed to have ignored, the deep-rooted racism that permeated the system and how it affected lives, including his own. The brutality he endured was a devastating blow, not only physically, but emotionally. Jamal found himself questioning whether his father would truly protect him, or if he was just another young black man in a town that did not accept him. When the situation escalated and the officers realized they were dealing with the captain's son, Jamal felt a chill run down his spine. The panic on their faces was palpable, but it did not lessen the pain he felt. Their attempt to evade responsibility only heightened his frustration. It was then that he realized it was not just a matter of self-defense. It was a struggle against a system that had deep flaws. The repercussions of the incident quickly spread throughout the town and on social media. Jamal saw his story being shared, commented on, and debated in every corner. But as the town stirred, he felt isolated and vulnerable. As a law student, he had knowledge of the injustices, but now he was an unwilling protagonist in his own tragic narrative. He did not want to be just a statistic. He wanted to be heard. Frank Anderson was in a dilemma. As a father, his instinct was to protect Jamal, but as police chief, he was trapped in a world where loyalty to his men often outweighed ethics. The brutality to which his son had been subjected was not only a blow to his parenting, but also a call to responsibility that he could not ignore. The pressure from society and the fear of losing the respect of his peers weighed on him like an anchor. Meanwhile, the community was beginning to mobilize. Friendships and bonds were forming around Jamal, including people he didn't know well but who showed solidarity. Among them was Sarah, a local activist who had always fought against oppression and injustice. She approached Jamal, offering support and a space for him to express his pain. Their friendship began to blossom amid the chaos, but the challenges of their pasts and the racial tensions in the city threatened that connection. Jamal's journey was just beginning. Each obstacle he faced not only tested his strength, but also forced him to confront his own beliefs and fears. He wondered if he would have the courage necessary to fight not just for himself, but for all those facing the same oppression. The struggle for justice was becoming an internal battle, and he needed to decide if he was willing to risk everything for a better future. The challenges that arose were immense. The betrayal of some of his peers, who could not bear the pressure of the situation, and the fear that his father would not make the right decisions, left Jamal in a fragile position. The lessons he had learned throughout his life began to echo in his mind as he fought against the feeling of helplessness. He knew that to win, he would need to find a strength he had yet to recognize within himself. The emotional tension grew each day, forcing Jamal to confront not only the external injustice, but also the internal wounds that accompanied him. He wanted to believe that an open dialogue with his father could bring about change, but the reality of the situation made him question whether that was truly possible. Now more than ever, he needed courage and determination to face not only the battle against the system, but also the demons that inhabited his own mind. Before we continue with this gripping story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories, and let us know in the comments which city you are watching this video from. Jamal felt the weight of others' expectations, as if every step he took on the streets was a reminder that his last name carried a different meaning. He knew the city was divided, and as the days passed, this division became more evident. The solidarity that emerged around his story also brought to light old rivalries and prejudices that he had never noticed so clearly before. The conversations that had once been light-hearted among friends were now loaded with tension. Every joke someone made about the police or the justice system struck him like a knife, leaving him conflicted. Sarah, the activist who had become a friend, tried to help Jamal understand the importance of his struggle. She often spoke about how every voice mattered and how change could be slow but possible. However, Jamal felt trapped between two worlds: the world he knew, where his father was a symbol of authority, and the world that Sarah represented, where the fight against injustice was a priority. He didn't know how to navigate this duality without losing himself. The pressure intensified when a video of the incident with the police began to circulate on social media. Public outrage grew. While some supported him, others attacked him, calling him ungrateful or even a provocateur. This left him distressed. He wanted to be an agent of change, but he didn't know how. When the news reached his father, Jamal realized that Frank was taking a defensive stance. He didn't want the police's name to be tarnished, and that meant the truth about what happened to his son could be distorted. At law school, Jamal's classmates began to look at him differently. Those who had once admired him now murmured in groups. Some avoided him, while others approached him to discuss what had happened. Jamal felt exposed, as if he were being judged not only for his actions, but for his identity. He struggled to maintain his composure, but the pain and frustration were palpable. He wanted to be more than a victim. He wanted to be a symbol of resistance. However, every conversation he had about the incident seemed to drain him, leaving him emotionally exhausted. Sarah noticed the change in Jamal. She tried to encourage him to express himself, to channel his pain into something productive. One day, while they were walking after a meeting, she challenged him to write about his experiences. "You have a powerful voice," she said. "Use it. Don't let this story be told by others." Jamal hesitated. How could he put into words the confusion and anger he felt? How could he write about a father who was on the opposite side of the struggle he wanted to engage in? Yet, the idea of expressing himself fascinated and terrified him at the same time. Meanwhile, the tension in the city grew. Protests began to be organized, and Jamal found himself in a dilemma. He wanted to participate, but the fear that it could drive him further away from his father paralyzed him. He felt torn between the need to speak out and the desire to have a healthy relationship with Frank. Each day he wondered if he would be able to confront the truth and what it would mean for his family. That night, looking at the sky, Jamal reflected on what he had learned in his studies. He knew that the fight for justice was not easy and often involved sacrifices, but the idea of sacrificing his relationship with his father left him anguished. He didn't want to be a traitor, but he also couldn't stay silent in the face of injustice. The battle was becoming internal, and the emotions accompanying him were complex. Sarah, noticing Jamal's struggle, decided to organize a meeting with other young people in the community. She wanted Jamal to have a safe space to share his experiences and hear those of others. The idea was to create a dialogue, a space where everyone could express their pain and hopes. As he listened to the stories of others, Jamal felt a connection that made him realize he was not alone. Each account of injustice and pain resonated within him, and a new determination began to emerge. But even with the support of the community, Jamal knew there was a long way to go. He needed to find his voice, not just for himself, but for all those who felt invisible. The tensions in his personal life and in the city were real, and he was about to step into unknown territory, where every step could bring new consequences. Choosing to speak out could be the beginning of a battle he never imagined, but now he felt increasingly ready to fight. The pressure was mounting, and he knew he could no longer remain silent. That morning, Jamal woke up with a weight on his heart. The day promised to be different, but he didn't know exactly how. As he prepared for law school, he looked in the mirror and saw a young man who was transforming. The dark circles under his eyes were a testament to the sleepless nights consumed by thoughts of his father and external pressures. However, there was a growing flame inside him, a determination that was beginning to shape his decisions. As he walked to the university, the atmosphere was electric. He felt that something was about to happen, but he didn't know what. Upon entering the classroom, he saw his classmates gathered in groups, whispering. Jamal quickly realized that the topic of the moment was the protest scheduled for that afternoon. To his surprise, many of the students were discussing the possibility of joining the demonstration. The idea of being surrounded by people who shared his concerns made his chest tighten. Fear and anxiety were present, but now there was also a spark of hope. However, hope soon faded when an even more disturbing video began to circulate. It was a recent recording of another incident involving the police, this time with Jamal's childhood friend, Malik. The video showed Malik being aggressively detained with no apparent reason. Despair and anger flooded Jamal as he watched the video. He remembered Malik, a boy who had always been kind and full of dreams. Now his life was at risk because of the prejudice and violence that permeated society. The anguish that overtook Jamal was palpable. He felt as if he was standing on a front line, and the battle was not just about him, but about everyone he loved. What did it mean to be a defender of justice if he himself was paralyzed by fear? The memory of his father standing up against those who questioned the police haunted him. Jamal was about to make a decision that could change everything. During the break, he joined Sarah and other classmates who were organizing the protest. The energy in the air was contagious, but Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to cross a line. "You're going to join us, right?" Sarah asked with a hopeful look. Jamal hesitated. He wanted to, but doubt consumed him. The idea of confronting his father while also speaking out for Malik felt like a mountain that seemed impossible to climb. However, as the afternoon approached, something within him transformed. The image of Malik being treated unfairly ignited a flame that could no longer be ignored. He realized that his struggle was not just a personal issue, but a collective necessity. Jamal decided that he could not remain silent. He needed to stand up and make his voice heard. Upon arriving at the protest site, the crowd was already gathering. Jamal felt adrenaline coursing through his body. He looked around and saw familiar and unfamiliar faces, all united by a cause. As he walked among them, the emotional tension mounted. He remembered every laugh shared with Malik, every dream they had built together. Now, he was there, about to fight for everything that Malik and so many others represented. However, before he could join the group, his phone vibrated. It was a message from his father. "Jamal, we need to talk. Don't do anything rash." Jamal's heart raced. The message was a cruel reminder of what was at stake. He looked at the crowd, at those who were ready to fight, and at the image of his father who had always been his anchor. The dilemma intensified. If he joined the protest, would he be betraying his father? And if he didn't, would he be betraying himself and everyone who depended on him? The emotions became overwhelming. Jamal felt lost between loyalty to his father and the need to be true to himself and to Malik. He wanted to scream, but he was trapped in a deafening silence. Deep down, he knew he had to make a choice that would change his life forever. With the crowd around him, he found himself facing not only social injustice, but also his own fears and uncertainties. Then, looking up at the sky, Jamal felt a wave of courage. He was not alone. The fight was bigger than him, and this revelation propelled him to move forward. He joined the protest, not only for Malik, but for all those who had been silenced. As he raised his sign, he felt that he was finally finding his voice. The emotional impact of this decision was overwhelming. He knew there was no turning back, but he also felt that he was finally on the right path. The fight for justice was beginning, and with it a new journey for Jamal. Jamal joined the crowd, his heart beating in unison with the energy around him. The protest unfolded before him like a sea of voices and signs, all crying out for justice. Adrenaline filled his body, but the decision he had made was not without consequences. He knew that his father, upon seeing his choice, would be disappointed, and that weighed heavily on his conscience. As they marched through the streets, the feeling of empowerment Jamal experienced was accompanied by a shadow of anxiety. He wasn't sure what to expect after the protest. The possibility of a negative reaction from his father haunted him. With every shout of support for the cause, he remembered the message he had received, like a constant echo in his mind. "Don't do anything rash." That phrase felt like a warning, a reminder that his life was about to change irreversibly. During the march, Jamal ran into Sarah again. She was excited, shouting slogans, but she noticed his worried expression. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. Jamal hesitated, looking at the ground before responding. "What if my dad finds out? What if he doesn't forgive me for this?" Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. "Jamal, you're doing the right thing. What's at stake is bigger than any family disagreement. Your dad will understand." Her words were like a balm, but the uncertainty still lingered. He wanted to believe everything would be okay, but the fear of the unknown continued to torment him. At the end of the march, as people began to disperse, Jamal felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He had joined the fight, but now he wondered what it truly meant for his life. On the way home, his heart raced, and the reality of what he had done began to sink in. He knew the consequences would not be limited to a disagreement with his father. There was also the possibility of backlash, both from the police and from people who disagreed with the protest. When he finally arrived home, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Jamal's father was waiting for him in the living room, his face serious and arms crossed. Jamal felt a knot in his stomach. He knew this conversation would be difficult. "Where have you been?" his father asked, his voice firm but tinged with concern. I went to the protest, Dad, for Malik and for everyone who is suffering," Jamal replied, trying to keep his voice steady. The silence that followed was deafening. His father looked at him, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. "Don't you understand the danger this represents? You're my son, and I can't lose you to this madness." His father's words cut through Jamal like a knife. He felt small, as if all his hopes and convictions were being dismantled. "But I can't stay silent. Malik doesn't deserve this. No one deserves this." He felt anger rising within him, a mix of frustration and despair. The conversation continued, but each word seemed like another barrier between father and son. Jamal realized that, although his determination was strong, the internal struggle between his loyalty to his family and his need for justice was a new obstacle he hadn't expected to face. He felt torn, as if he were losing the connection with his father, a relationship he had always valued. That night, Jamal lay in bed, surrounded by a darkness that mirrored his confusion. He questioned his choices and their consequences, wondering what his life would be like moving forward. The phone vibrated again. It was a message from Malik, who was at home recovering from the horrible experience he had endured. "Thank you for being there for me, Jamal. You're a true friend." Malik's words brought a little comfort to Jamal's heart. He knew his struggle was not just personal, it was also a fight for all those who had no voice. But at the same time, the weight of his decision began to accumulate. He felt he needed to prepare for new challenges. The protest had only been the beginning. In the following days, Jamal devoted himself to learning more about civil rights and social injustices. He began to get involved in support groups and attend meetings. This new journey brought new friends and allies, but also challenges. The fear of retaliation and the financial difficulties his family faced began to intensify. He felt pressured to deal with all of this while trying to maintain his relationship with his father. Jamal realized that the road ahead would be full of obstacles, but amid all the uncertainty, there was a new clarity. He was no longer just reacting to what was happening around him. He was becoming an agent of change, and that gave him strength. The fight for justice would not be easy, but at last he was ready to face whatever came his way. Jamal sat in his room, surrounded by books and papers. The dim light from the lamp illuminated his thoughtful face as he reflected on everything that had happened since the protest. The argument with his father still echoed in his mind, but at the same time, he felt a flame of determination ignite within him. He was learning to trust himself more, to understand that his voice had power, even if it meant confronting people he loved. In the days that followed, Jamal decided he could not let fear and doubt paralyze him. He began to get involved in local groups fighting for social justice. These meetings were a mix of hope and frustration. He met incredible people who shared their stories and struggles, but he also faced the harsh reality of a system that often ignored those who cried out for change. Each new experience shaped his worldview, expanding his understanding of what it meant to fight for a cause greater than himself. One afternoon during a meeting, Jamal met Leo, a young activist with contagious energy. Leo spoke passionately about how change was possible, but that it required courage to stand up and fight. Jamal felt inspired by his words and, for the first time, began to believe he could make a difference. Their friendship grew quickly, with Leo becoming a mentor and a friend. Jamal realized he didn't have to face this path alone. He had allies who supported him. However, life at home continued to be a challenge. Jamal's father was still disappointed, and arguments became frequent. Jamal tried to explain his perspective, but his father's frustration prevented him from listening. There were times when Jamal wondered if it was all worth it, if his fight for justice was really affecting his family relationship. But each time he sat down to study the injustices they faced, a new strength arose within him. He knew he needed to be perseverant, not just for himself, but for all those who could not fight for themselves. One day, while walking to a meeting, Jamal found a protest sign thrown on the ground. He picked it up and read it. The words were harsh, but carried an authentic feeling of struggle and hope. At that moment, he realized that success was not just about winning a battle, it was about the journey, about the lessons learned, and the friendships built along the way. Jamal understood that true wealth was the ability to impact lives, to unite with others in search of a common purpose. Over time, Jamal began to apply the lessons he learned in his own life. He strove to be more patient and understanding with his father, trying to understand his perspective. Although there were still misunderstandings, Jamal realized that empathy was a powerful tool. He began to share his experiences and learnings with his father, explaining why the fight for justice was so important to him. Gradually, his father began to see his son's passion and determination. The conversations became less tense and more open, allowing both to see each other as caring individuals, even with differing opinions. The difficulties did not suddenly disappear, but Jamal began to face his fears with more confidence. He learned to accept help from his friends and to seek support when needed. Each challenge became an opportunity for growth, and he felt stronger with each step. His worldview was changing. He now saw life as a network of connections, where each action could resonate beyond what he imagined. Reflecting on everything he had experienced, Jamal realized that true transformation was happening within him. He was no longer just the boy who feared disappointing his father. He had become a conscious young man, an advocate for justice, capable of facing his own insecurities. The path ahead was still uncertain, but looking back, he saw that each challenge had shaped him and prepared him for what was to come. Jamal finally understood that life was a continuous journey of learning and overcoming, and he was ready to move forward with courage and hope. The meeting was scheduled for that night, and Jamal felt his heart racing. He knew that this would be a pivotal moment in his journey. The community had mobilized for a peaceful protest in front of the city hall, and he would be one of the speakers. The anticipation hung in the air, but he also felt the pressure to get everything right. It was the first time he was putting himself in such a visible position, and the idea of disappointing his father still haunted him. When he arrived at the location, he saw a crowd gathered, people of all ages holding signs with messages of hope and change. Jamal felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. Leo was there, animated, patting everyone on the back and encouraging participants to come together. The energy was contagious, but doubt still lingered over Jamal. He remembered his father's words, warning him about the dangers of getting involved in activities that could bring unwanted consequences. When it was his turn to speak, Jamal stepped up to the small makeshift stage. He looked out at the crowd, and silence settled in. What would he say? What message would he convey? He took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice trembled at first, but as he shared his story and the struggles his community faced, confidence began to grow within him. He talked about the injustices, about the importance of unity, and how each person could make a difference. Hearing the warm reactions from the audience, Jamal felt empowered, as if he were finding his true self. But in the middle of his speech, tension rose when a group of counter-protesters appeared, shouting and making noise. They were there to disrupt the peaceful demonstration. Jamal felt his heart race. Anger and fear began to swirl in his mind. He remembered all his conversations with Leo about how true strength lay in keeping calm and focusing on the message of peace. He fought against the impulse to retreat, to hide behind his insecurities. With a deep sigh, Jamal decided he could not let fear dominate that moment. He turned to the crowd and, with a firm voice, called for everyone to join in a shout of unity. He began to lead a chorus of words of support and determination. The crowd responded, echoing his words and turning fear into strength. Jamal saw the faces around him light up with hope, and this encouraged him even more. With the support of Leo and the other activists, the atmosphere of the protest changed. The voices of support began to drown out the cries of despair. Jamal's courage inspired everyone to stand firm, and the collective energy transformed into a wave of empathy and love. He realized that strength lay in solidarity, in the ability to unite for a greater purpose. As the tension still hung in the air, Jamal remembered his father. He wished he were there, witnessing the transformation that was happening. With that image in mind, he decided that no matter what happened, he could not let fear dominate him. He looked at the group of opponents and, with a tone of voice that exuded confidence, began to speak about the importance of dialogue, mutual understanding, and the pursuit of peaceful solutions. He was not there to fight, but to build. Jamal's words resonated with the crowd, and gradually the cries of despair began to dissipate. He saw some people from the opposing group starting to listen. What began as a confrontation transformed into a conversation. Jamal realized that by choosing empathy over anger, he was not only defending his cause but also showing his father and everyone present that there was a different path, one that prioritized understanding and respect. When the tumult finally calmed down, Jamal felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had not only overcome his fear, but had also managed to unite people around a message of hope. At that moment, he realized that his journey was not just about him, but about all those who felt invisible. Looking at the united crowd, a new clarity emerged in his mind. True change begins when you have the courage to listen and to be heard, and that the struggle for justice is not just a battle to be won, but a path to be walked with unity and love. By the end of that night, even with the uncertainties that still existed, Jamal felt stronger. He had discovered that true overcoming was not just in winning, but in connecting with others and finding strength within himself. He was ready to continue his journey, not only as an activist, but as a human being who had learned to value what truly mattered. The crowd began to disperse slowly, but the energy still lingered in the air. Jamal stepped down from the stage, feeling light, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Leo approached him, a wide smile on his face, and hugged him tightly. "You were amazing, Jamal. I never thought you could turn that tense moment into something so powerful," Leo said, admiration evident in his voice. Jamal smiled, but his heart was still racing. He knew he had done something important, but he also felt the pressure of the expectations that would follow. "What if I can't keep this up? What if people expect more from me now?" Jamal asked, his gaze lost in the crowd that was starting to disperse. Leo looked him straight in the eyes. "You don't have to be perfect. What matters is that you connected with people and made a difference. This is just the beginning, Jamal. Every step counts." As they talked, a few people approached to congratulate him. An older woman holding a sign with an inspiring phrase said, "You gave us hope tonight. We need more voices like yours." Jamal felt a warmth in his chest upon hearing this. He realized that his words not only resonated with the crowd, but would also reach those who were not present, echoing in the community. However, there was a part of him that still worried about his father's reaction. He knew his father would not fully support his choice to get involved in protests. The man had always been cautious, fearing that Jamal would put himself in dangerous situations. When he returned home, Jamal faced doubt. How would he explain to his father his decision to become an activist? The idea of disappointing him still haunted him. Upon entering the house, he saw his father sitting in the living room, a worried expression on his face. Jamal took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation that lay ahead. "Hi, Dad," he said, trying to sound light. "Something important happened today." His father looked at him, his eyes filled with expectation. "I saw the news." "The protest? You were there." The concern was clear in his voice. Jamal hesitated. "Yes, I spoke with people. About our community, about unity. I didn't want you to worry, but I felt I needed to do this." Silence settled between them. Jamal's father seemed to ponder his words. "I understand that you want to be heard, but you also need to take care of yourself. The world can be dangerous, and I just want you to be safe." "I know, Dad," Jamal replied, his voice firmer. "But I realize that I can't stay silent. If we don't speak up, things will never change. I want to fight for a better future for all of us." He saw his father relax a little, the concern still visible, but now mixed with a faint admiration. "I want you to know that even if I don't fully understand, I respect your decision. Just be careful," his father said, the tension easing. Jamal felt that this conversation was an important step. He was beginning to build a space of understanding between them. In the days that followed, Jamal continued to engage with the community. He organized meetings, planned new initiatives, and became a link between people yearning for change. With each new gathering, he felt stronger and more confident. The stories he heard from others about their struggles and hopes broadened his perspective. One day, Leo found him in a cafe, excited about the news of a new action they were planning. "Jamal, you won't believe it. The community youth group wants to join us. They saw how you presented yourself and want to help make a difference too." Jamal smiled, his heart filling with joy. He realized that by opening up and sharing his voice, he had inspired others to do the same. The transformation he sought began to happen not only within him, but around him as well. He reflected on how the courage to speak and connect had changed his life. Jamal was no longer just a young person with doubts, but a voice in his community, a symbol of hope and change. He now understood that the true fight for justice was a path walked together, and he was ready to continue this journey, not just as an activist, but as a human being who had learned to value the strength of unity and empathy. Jamal felt different, as if a new world had opened up before him. The journey he had started on the night of the protest had transformed him in ways he could never have imagined. He had not only found his voice, but had also inspired others to rise up and unite for a common purpose. The energy he felt on stage when he spoke to the crowd now pulsed in every meeting he organized. He had become a symbol of hope in his community, a link between people seeking change. Over time, Jamal began to realize the depth of his own accomplishments. He had faced his fears and doubts, and in doing so helped others break free from their own inhibitions. Each meeting became a celebration of collective strength, where previously silenced voices were finally heard. The unity he promoted was not just about protesting, but about creating a safe space where everyone could share their stories, struggles, and dreams. However, the journey was not without its challenges. In a moment of weakness, Jamal found himself hesitating. The pressure was mounting, and the responsibility he felt was heavy. He wondered if he could maintain the momentum, if he would be able to deal with the consequences of his actions. But looking into the faces of his friends and the community, he found the motivation he needed. They needed him and he needed them. The strength of friendship and solidarity became the foundation of his struggle. On a fateful day, news reached them. A large corporation was planning a project that threatened the community. Jamal and his friends knew they needed to act. With renewed courage, they gathered, discussed strategies, and prepared for direct action. Victory was not just a distant dream, it was something they could achieve together. The action was a success. The community united, and public pressure became unbearable for the corporation. Jamal, in his speech, reminded everyone that true strength lies in unity, and in the end, when the corporation decided to back down, he felt a wave of emotion. It was proof that their voices together could provoke real change. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Jamal realized that his journey was about more than just activism. It was about personal overcoming, learning that true strength comes from within, and that every step, no matter how small, counts. He had learned that success was not just about achieving external victories, but about transforming oneself and helping others do the same. The friendship he cultivated with Leo and other community members had become a fundamental pillar of his life. They were not just allies in the fight, but friends who helped him see the beauty in diversity and empathy. He understood that true wisdom does not come from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with courage and compassion. Jamal looked to the future with hope. He knew that his journey was just beginning, and by inviting everyone to join the fight for justice and equality, he made a heartfelt appeal. Let's do this together. Each of us has a voice that deserves to be heard. Share your experiences and don't be afraid to fight for what is right. Together we can make a difference. Jamal's message resonated in his community, and the invitation he made turned into a call to action. The power of unity and friendship not only changed his life but also became a powerful force that could transform the world. So, don't hesitate. Stand up, make your voice heard, and share this message. Together, we can create a better future. Like, subscribe, and share your stories in the comments. The change starts now.